Okay, so before I get into any opinions on the matter, I do want to lay out exactly what happened that caused this controversy. Carmelo Anthony is a 19-year-old Texan who was found guilty and sentenced to 35 years for fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. Carmelo Anthony was also 17 at the time of the stabbing. According to ABC7, the confrontation began at a track meet in Frisco, Texas, a suburb of Dallas. Anthony entered the team tent of Metcalf, where Metcalf told Anthony to leave the tent where Anthony was sitting. Anthony reportedly responded by saying, "Touch me and see what happens," while reaching his hand inside of his backpack. According to his teammates' testimonies, Metcalf then shoved Anthony in the shoulder, to which Anthony immediately pulled the knife out of his backpack and stabbed Metcalf once in the chest. Metcalf died later on. This happened April 2nd of 2025, and it is now June of 2026, and Karmelo has finally had his day in court. And the jury concluded that he was guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 35 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 17 and a half. Now, to anyone with a functioning frontal lobe, this seems like he got off pretty light. There's a possibility that he can be free before he's 40 years old, while Austin Metcalf is going to be 17 forever. Case seems like it would be fairly cut and dry. Every fact indicates that Carmelo Anthony was the aggressor and perpetrator of the violence that occurred. So why is this such a hot topic? Why has this case been met with such controversy? Well. It would be because of the usual suspects.
Do shit. I'm guessing you ain't gonna do shit.
I don't have an opinion.
The African American community. We need to admit that there is a problem with the African American community that starts at the roots of the culture. Now, Karmelo wasn't a product of a broken home. His family wasn't in poverty, and according to footage provided by his family, he was quite the family man. Prior to the incident, the Anthony family lived in a suburban neighborhood in Frisco, which is again a suburb of Dallas. Karmelo wasn't the product of a tough upbringing. He didn't have to get it out the mud. All of the socioeconomic excuses that people use to justify bad behavior do not apply to Karmelo. I can't speak for his mentality, but based off of the news clips, in videos of his parents,
because I know my son. My son is no murder.
in family and friends, and supporters,
what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know.
Seems like his family and community suffer from an inability to take personal responsibility for their actions. For the past decade, we've lived in a world where the mere perception of racism can have you fired, deplatformed, or canceled. No matter the context, no matter the factual basis of what was said. I think the best example of how this behavior has culminated was the phrase, "A black woman is speaking. Shut up and listen."
I don't have an opinion. I don't have an opinion here.
Just like Karmelo was doing. I'm glad you just said that. That's what Karmelo was doing.
Now that phrase is pretty much used to ironically point out the sheer volume of black women. It was once used with the most utmost sincerity. People were called racist for pointing out that black people were looting stereos and TVs instead of toilet paper and bread. We as a society have been giving black people a pardon in the court of public opinion for the better part of 2 decades. And it's resulted in infantile, childlike behavior from almost the entirety of the community. In the case of Karmelo, it's his family's inability to understand what he did was objectively wrong. There's zero accountability, only excuses. Either the courts were out to get Karmelo, or the jury was specifically handpicked so that he would receive a guilty verdict. Either the system is broken or the judge was compromised. The Anthonys haven't even been able to come to the consensus that Karmelo murdered Austin. They're claiming it was self-defense and that he was getting jumped, that he was scared, that Karmelo was a little tiny boy and Austin and his teammates are so much bigger. He was so scared. He was a scared little boy. They never once have mentioned why Karmelo decided to enter their tent. They never provided a reason for why Karmelo brought a knife to a track meet. They're under the impression that if they scream racism loud enough, it will drown out the facts. Because we as a society have proven that that is the case. If you do something wrong and you're black, if you scream racism loud enough, it will drown out every irrefutable fact. But I think the worst is that even as of June 12th, 2025, the Anthonys still have not apologized to the Metcalfs. They know that Karmelo killed Austin. That's an irrefutable fact. Objective reality. Karmelo killed Metcalf. And the Anthonys cannot even apologize or provide direct condolences because they do not feel like their child did anything wrong. They do not feel bad. They don't feel sympathy for the Metcalfs. They don't feel sympathy for the fact that a family lost their son. They do not think he did anything wrong. I think it's been proven evident that his parents are responsible for his lack of responsibility and his lack of care for human life. They can visit Karmelo in prison. The Metcalfs have to go to a cemetery to see their son. Yet the Anthonys in their team have the audacity to call this illegal lynching, while Karmelo is still breathing and healthy.
Let her talk.
This was a legal lynching that happened in here today.
And this is not isolated, man. How many times have we heard the phrase, he didn't do nothing? He didn't do nothing wrong. He didn't do nothing. When you just watched a video of somebody blatantly breaking the law. How many times have liberal activist judges allowed criminals to be released for the sake of social justice, only for those criminals to be back in prison, usually at the expense of another human's life? The answer to that question is several. We have heard this story several times. The rearrest rate for black offenders is 81% compared to 61% of their white peers. Our prisons are filled with people that didn't do nothing, but somehow continue to end up in prison. Now, does this mean that I think black people are destined to be criminals, or the color of their skin or my skin renders them unable to obey the law? No. Absolutely not. I'm not dogging on black people for the color of the skin. I enjoy not being able to be sunburned. It's pretty cool. What I do have a problem with is being associated with people that rock gold teeth, have zero high school education, can't read or speak fluent English. I'm not trying to be on the same side as groups of people that listen to Lil Baby and NBA Youngboy. It's not color, it's culture. And the culture is rotten. As long as I have been alive, we've been fed this bullshit that it's been perfectly fine for black men to treat women like objects and set pieces because it's part of their culture. It's part of hip-hop culture. They can call women bitches and hoes and slap them and idolize pimps and hoes, everything else, because it's part of their culture. It's perfectly fine for a strip club to sponsor an event at an NBA game that have kids in attendance, because it's black culture. This premise is extremely damaging to every nonviolent, law-abiding African American, as we are now associated with all of this bad faith behavior. The general public, at their core, does not view African Americans as their equals, not because of some racial superiority, but because of the actions of the greater African American community.
Want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for words. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more.
Rest in peace, Trayvon Martin.
Let me ask you this right now.
This clip in particular stood out to me because she is being absolutely genuine. I do think that this woman believes that the system failed Karmelo. I think that she thinks all the witnesses were lying, and the court sent her son to prison because he was black. She has absolutely zero reason to feel anything differently. The entire past decade, she's been being told that her and people like her can't do anything wrong, that her culture is to be respected more than the next person's culture, and that any negative aspect about her or her life was not her fault. It's a concentrated effort by white people in the American government to make sure that she doesn't live a good life. She has been conditioned by years of media slop, black squares, and balled up fists. We as a society have adopted to this feeling of guilt for the African American community. We use graphic photos, excruciating testimonies, and Hollywood magic to tell stories about the unsavory aspects of American history. The result of this has been the infantilization of the black community. Like I said before, the Karmelo case seemingly should have been open and shut. Classic case of someone losing their temper and doing something they regret. Punishment did fit the crime, even if I do personally think it was a little light. The main defense of Karmelo was that he was acting in self-defense, since he feared for his safety because Metcalf shoved him. The law allows you to use reasonable, proportional force to protect yourself against unlawful force, provided you did not provoke the attack. And you must reasonably believe that the danger is immediate. Karmelo entered the tent of Metcalf, instigated the confrontation, met his shove with a knife to the chest. There isn't a single part of Texas law that would consider this self-defense. And when the self-defense argument fell flat, Anthony's team tried to get the conviction reduced to manslaughter. The main reason being that he didn't go to the track meet with an intention of killing anybody, and his reaction was terror-driven rather than an intentional murder. Now, this is why I say that the result of the past couple decades of coddling have resulted in the infantilization of blacks. Karmelo is 19. He was 17 at the time. He knew that if you stab somebody in the chest, there's a very likely chance that person will die. If you ask a 10-year-old what would happen if they stabbed somebody in the chest, they would probably come to the same conclusion. Karmelo reached in his backpack before any physical contact was made and intentionally stabbed Austin in the chest. He was a student athlete with the ability to represent his school at a track meet. It's not like he had poor hand-eye coordination. He stabbed exactly where he intended to stab. Sometimes it's just who they are as a person. Sometimes there's no systemic reason for someone's actions. Sometimes socioeconomic factors don't make someone enter a tent and stab one of the students in it. Sometimes people are just a result of their upbringing and the culture that they've been born into. Why have we reached the point where we have to break down why bad things are bad? Why do we have to explain to the black community that murder, no matter the context, is inherently wrong? I think another contributing factor is that black communities typically do not view intelligence or long-term thinking as a virtue. Fast money and the perception of wealth is sought after more than education. Structure is not incentivized nor practiced. 69 to 73% of black babies born are born to unmarried mothers, and 63% of black children live in single-parent households. Compare that to 77% of white children live in two-parent houses. I have an issue with the notion that this is because some government effort to destroy the black community because the white man is inherently evil. Because you do not see these numbers with any other groups of minorities in America. There's more Hispanics in America than black people, yet less than half of Hispanic children live in single-parent households. So if it isn't systemic racism, then what is it? It isn't really all that complicated, man. Just because black people do not consider being educated and responsible to be cool. For the past 30 to 40 years, most African American media has glorified criminals, drug dealers, murderers, pimps. So it shouldn't come as a shock to anyone when the youth start emulating the behaviors of the artists they listen to. Even going into today, we have rappers like NBA Youngboy that accumulate billions of views and listens across all streaming platforms, while rappers like J. Cole, who have actual positive messages, aren't embraced by the black community. Rapping in an intellectual manner is corny and unk status, while rapping about murdering people and drinking lean is actually gay.
Oh yeah, appreciate you, buddy. Yeah.
Everybody knows what a YN is. If I say YN, you can envision the shiesty skinny jeans with a fucking extendo poking out. And unfortunately, that same image is exactly what probably 90% of Americans think when you say the phrase black teenager. They don't think of a kid with a backpack that's going to school. They think of a black kid in a mask that's about to steal a Kia and drive it into a parked car. Why do we have to explain to the black community that murder, no matter the context, is inherently wrong? Why do we have to continuously remind people that yes, black people can be just as heinous as their white counterparts? So how do you fix this?
That's the neat thing. You don't.
I don't think you can. We as Americans have fostered a culture that has compromised a large portion of a demographic. There's constant cycles of abuse, abandonment, and addiction that run rampant despite having access to the exact same resources as everybody else in the country. It would require a level of reflection and self-realization on the scale of tens of millions of people. There would have to be a conscious effort to not patronize the black community, like giving sinners an Academy Award, and treat adults like adults. Do away with DEI and perpetual government assistance. But even after all that,
because after all that,
we are decades too late to addressing this problem. We as a country have failed Karmelo Anthony and his family. But we failed them with our inability to address that African American culture has grown to become a violent perversion on their own struggle. Their leaders are entertainers who exploit inner city violence for profit and then do not improve the communities they come from. My hope is that him and his family use the next 17 and a half to 35 years to reflect on how their actions landed them in this situation, but more than likely, no lesson will be learned. It doesn't matter if it's by design. It doesn't matter if it's by the design of our government or a foreign government. Black people are capable of being on the same level of productivity as their peers. It just requires absolute cultural overhaul and a sense of accountability that I don't think most people are ready for. All right, well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I've never made a video like this before, so if you want more, let me know. Tell me what you agreed with, disagreed with. Peace, nigga.